being all right, Debbie, get her started.
Get her started. So we're going to talk about HECM loans tonight. I am not a loan person as far as licensed in loans. So we've got Bob on the meeting tonight, and he is. So he happens to be right in our neck of the woods. So if anybody has really deep questions, he's the one to talk to, not me. We're going to do it at a high level, and we're going to show you how to use HECM loans when you're working with buyers in today's crazy world. So I'll switch over and get my screen going here. So let's see, share that, and it should be, am I on that? Yep. So get you guys out of the way a little bit that I can actually see what's up here. So my name's Debbie Gentry. I live, been in the Villages, Florida, which is the world's largest 55 plus community. So when we talk about HECM loans, you'll find out real quick why it's important in my market and Donald's market also. So it's the thing, my phone number's here. If you have any questions, you can give me a call. I am a Florida broker. I run as Florida Broker Associate. I'm certified in probate. If anybody needs to know more about that, call me, text me. And I have a ton of designations. I didn't put them all here. And I definitely welcome any referrals that you might want to send my way. So everybody can see the screen okay? Correct? Hello?
Yes, we can see the screen.
I'm good.
Oh, okay, good.
Thumbs up.
Yep, I can't see the chat. So anyways, Donald will have to watch the chat for us. So what is a HECM loan? It's really an adjective or an acronym for home equity conversion mortgage. And it's for purchase of a home. So this is how to, help your buyers 62 and older buy the house they desire, not the house they think they can buy via the cash they have in their hands. So we're not trying to learn how to write a HECM loan. We're trying to show people from a buyer side how this may be a useful tool for them. And then we get them over to the HECM specialist and let them do the work to explain how it all works. So we're not discussing a reverse mortgage after a purchase. So if you buy a house and you want to do a reverse mortgage after you have already purchased, that's a totally different product, and that's not what we're talking about here. So talk to somebody that's a specialist in that. So just a disclaimer there, because it is two different products. So how much do we think a 62-year-old buyer wants to spend in a monthly mortgage payment? Can anybody put it in the chat? What do you think without taxes and insurance? Does everybody think that 62-year-old buyer of a house wants to spend per month? Wow, Donald, I'm going to sell you a house. Zero. Yeah, Vince, you're about right. So the better question is, what's that monthly mortgage payment going to look like in your area? Your area versus my area might be totally different. So how much would it be? So what can I interest rates are you guys getting on your long-term investments? If that's 401k or SEPs or whatever you might have, what do you think you're averaging interest rate wise? Put it in the chat. Anybody know what they're getting? Donald's getting 8%. Anybody else getting somewhere around there? 4 for Vince, yeah. So pretty much to me, the average buyer comes and they're thinking they want to conservatively have a mortgage payment somewhere in that $800 to $1,300 range. And then you add taxes and insurance on that. And right now, when you're talking to financial people, they can pretty much tell you 6% to 10%. And, you know, with the stock market doing what it's doing, who knows? So it's a thing that right now, the interest or the investments are going to be up and down as the world goes up and down. So we're going to use the scenario that we have a couple and they want to buy a house to live in it as a primary residence. In Florida, primary means 6 months, 1 day and more. And they're homesteaded, meaning they're living in it. They may go up north to get away from the Florida heat for 5 months, but they're living in it primarily the entire year, more than they are someplace else. We're going to use that the couple, both of them are 62 years old. What kind of ways can they buy a house? Just normally. We know cash. What else can they do if they don't have enough cash to buy a house? Put it in the chat. What kind of mortgage, Donald? Okay. FHA, VA, what else is out there that they could use? USDA, yeah. Anything else? Can they borrow against their investments? Yep, they can borrow against their investments in the right scenario. They could. My parents, all right, I'm going to talk to your parents, Donald. So some of the ways they could do it is cash, conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, possibly buy it as a 1031 exchange, hold it for the time period required, and then make it their primary residence. And then the last one is the HECM for purchase loan. So do you ever have a buyer that comes to you and they have cash and they say, I've got $300,000 to buy that home, and you figure out real quick after you start talking to them about their needs and desires, they don't want a 300, they want a 500. What can you do? Well, you can ask them if they want to add cash to it, and they're going to say, no, my financial guy doesn't want me to take more money out. I don't want a mortgage or anything like that. So now it's time to explain what I consider the basics of how a HECM loan works. And it's just, your job is just to get them interested in talking to the HECM specialist. You don't need to know every detail. You don't need to understand every detail. So you just need to get them to the point where they say, yep, have one of your HECM specialists call me. So a HECM loan's available to buyers 62 years old and older. I say that with a caveat. You can have a buyer under 62, but I've had one and I really don't think it works well. So I encourage you to offer it to only people that are over 62, because the average age, if somebody's 55, kind of dilutes the advantage of buying with the HECM loan if they're too young. So they could buy it, they purchase a new home with approximately 35 to 50% down payment plus some closing costs. And then they're not required to make any more monthly payments as long as they live in that home. And the key word is required. They can make payments if they want to, but they're not required. So a lot of people are familiar with reverse mortgages, but very few realtors and very few other folks actually know what the HECM loan consists of. It is a specific type of reverse mortgage, and it is insured by the Federal Housing Administration, and it follows the rules set by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. That said, it's FHA insured. So when you get a HECM loan, even though you're not required to make any monthly payment, you are still required to pay your property taxes, homeowners insurance, upkeep of the home. So if you need a new roof, you need to put a new roof on, etc. And the required HOA fees are, in our case, amenities fees that we have that are required. So how do I explain it to a buyer? I just flat out tell them, hey, you know, I've sent you what you asked for, which was 300,000. I went up to 350 and you still don't like anything. Do you want to add cash? Nope. Do you want to do a mortgage? Nope. So let me explain the other potential option for you. So if you want to buy a home for 500,000, you can come to the table because you're both 62 with approximately 50% cash. So 250 of your 300 cash, and you'll have optional monthly payments, and you'll still have approximately 50,000 that you could take and hand back to the financial guy and let him invest it and see what they could do with that 50,000 instead of tying it up in the house. Are you interested in hearing more? And by that time, they're pretty intrigued. I will tell you, last Friday, I was talking to a lady. She wanted 400,000. When I got done with the whole situation, she asked to talk to one of my HECM folks on Friday night. And I found one that was available and they talked. Because what she really wanted is pretty much 650 to 700,000 in a house. So this chart can be changing at all times, but this is pretty much the chart. So in our case here, we're talking about two 62-year-olds, talking about a $500,000 purchase. They're going to come to the table somewhere around the 252,000 range. Everything changes from a day to day. So this is why I say don't get into specifics. Just say you're going to come to the table with approximately 50% cash towards your purchase and let the HECM specialist explain it all. You'll see as you are older, for that same 500,000, you come to the table with a lot less because this is all based on what they expect your lifespan to be. So if you're already 75 years old, they figure that you have a few less years than if you're 62. So that's why you don't have to put as much down. So if you're 85 and you want to buy a house, 147,000. And this goes up a lot. You can buy $1 million house with HECM. There's all kinds of different ways to buy homes. So that's why I don't get into the specifics of how to do it, because in today's world, there's a lot of options. So
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What happens to the rest of it? So let's say this 85-year-old wants to buy this $500,000 house and they only have to bring $147,600 to title at closing. Then are they paying larger payments, or something just feels like it's missing? I don't know. Yeah, I'm missing.
So this is the typical lien. So the mortgage is going to show up with the rest of the money, just like they do on a conventional loan. If you put a 20% down, they come with 80% on a conventional loan. Well, in this case, they're coming with 65% of the mortgage amount and 35% by the 85-year-old. Once again, the 85-year-old doesn't have to pay a penny toward the mortgage and interest if they don't desire to for the time that they are in that house. And we'll talk about when they have to sell and how it works there. Does that make any more sense, Amy?
I think I need to hear the part B to see,
Okay.
because I just feel like, okay, who's paying for the rest of it? Nothing is ever free. So,
The mortgage company. So,
and then they get the house at the end of the story.
well, that's what people think.
Okay, I'll wait till the end of the story. Keep talking. Sorry.
That's okay. So who should really consider the HECM? Married couple 62 and older, single person 62 and older, somebody over 62 or older that's getting a divorce. I had one of those, and she was in tears when she called me because she was getting a divorce and thought she was going to have to sell and move to an apartment outside the villages. She actually decided to show her ex she could do what she wanted to, and we bought a bigger and better house with a HECM loan. And so she pretty much showed him. Somebody over 62 that's lost income or a spouse. So when you are married and you lose the Social Security because of a death, or you lose a pension and Social Security because of a death, it's a good way to turn around and buy a house that you don't have mortgage payments. Folks with lower monthly income. So if they don't have as much monthly income, this is a good way to get them into a house. They may not be able to buy the 500,000, just depends, but it's a thing that they can do it. Folks that want to keep their second home, this does have to be primary. So if they have another home wherever, and they're going to keep that as their second home, they can do it. And then financial savvy buyers who understand investments. If you have a really good financial planner, financial advisor, they should be telling you to do a HECM loan all day long because of the way the investments work with them and versus what you're paying to have a HECM loan. So what's the benefits of doing a HECM? Well, you're able to buy more house, higher price, nicer home, what you really want versus what you can afford with your cash. You have the optional mortgage payment, so you don't have to make that payment if you don't want to. Unlike any of the other conventional FHA, VA loans, you're making mortgage payments every day. And if something happens and you lose a spouse at that point and lose income, then you're still making those payments or something has to change. The optional mortgage payments, once again, you're still paying taxes, insurance, upkeep, and HOA type fees that occur on the house. You only have to qualify for a loan on a residual income method. That's a whole nother topic. We'll let the HECM person explain that. So years ago, if somebody had really bad credit, a HECM loan worked really well. Well, now they kind of look at that where if you've had bankruptcies or if you've got tax liens or things like that, you may not be able to get it, but it's a whole nother animal and I don't try to go down that road. The down payment can come from various sources. And the way I understand, it's a 3-month seasoned. So if Donald can get it from his mom and dad and put it in his bank account for seasoning for 3 months, he can use it. And it is available for the majority of home types as long as it's HUD eligible. So if you're selling condos, it may or may not be HUD eligible. And so you really want to talk to a HECM specialist to understand what properties are and are not eligible in your area for HUD. So that's another one of those that it's very specific to your area. It can be anywhere in the United States. I understand Canada's got kind of a similar program, but I don't know anything about it. So if somebody understands it, teach class, teach us all. No resale of the home is required until, let's say, that couple are not in the home for 6 months contiguous. So it's the thing that they can be gone a month, come back a month, be gone a month, come back a month. As long as they're there more than 6 months, etc., in the home, you're pretty much in the clear for not having to sell the house. I always explain it to my buyers that if you were in a really bad car accident, both of you, and you ended up in the nursing home for 5 months, you don't have to sell the house. If you're in the nursing home for 8 months, you're going to have to get the house on the market, and you have 1 year of a regular sale to be able to sell that house. It is FHA insured. So as a lot of the HECM specialists will tell you, it's the safest loan out there because it is FHA insured. So if you buy it for 500, something happens, you need to sell it, and now it's worth 300. Worst case scenario, you're not having to come back with the extra monies, or your estate does not have to. There is no recourse. It's not like you have to do a short sale or anything like that. Obviously, it has to be appraised and it has to be fair market value. You can't sell it like a fire sale. So no loan repayment penalties. So if you buy a house with a HECM loan and then 6 years later you decide you want to move someplace else, you can repay it without the penalties. The negatives from the perspective. The first one is the biggest one that I have to overcome with the people that I talk to about it, because they hear the word reverse mortgage and they run. That has such a negative word to it, and it shouldn't. That's why I always say HECM. And if they say, well, that sounds like a reverse mortgage, and I say, yes, it is, but it's FHA secured. And so it's a totally different product. It does have to be primary. We've discussed that. One mortgagee must be 62 or older. Like I said, I recommend that everybody be 62 or older. It just makes things a lot more fair and actually make the benefit nice there. Like we discussed, negative credit payments may eliminate the eligibility. Must meet the HUD insured standards. So once again, if it's condo and it's not a HUD insured type product, then you won't be able to do it. It can have a higher interest rate. Generally, I see it to be about 1%. Don't know what's happening with the mortgages right now with everything going on, but you can buy it down. There's a whole lot of options behind the HECM product now, and I don't try to keep up with it. I let my HECM specialists tell the options once they start talking to them. In today's world, I think we're pretty much 60 days to do a closing for a HECM. The reason is our appraisals in this area, at least, are taking a while, and there may be a requirement for 2 appraisals. Once again, I don't worry about why that is. We just know there's a potential that 2 might have to happen. One is paid for by the buyer, the way I understand. The other one is put into the cost somewhere, I'm sure. And the last negative is most of the regular mortgage companies don't do the HECM loans. And when I've talked to them, they say that they don't do enough to be an expert at it. There's not enough money into it, etc. So you won't find most of your normal mortgage companies doing HECM loans. But off of this list, the biggest one is the kids normally think, oh my gosh, Amy's not going to get anything when I pass. Somebody else is going to have this house. and they don't understand. And that's why I encourage the buyers to get their kids on the call to hear the HECM person really explain it. And then there is a counseling call that happens, and I encourage them to have the kids on that call also. It's the thing, they just have a misperception of what is really reality. Because the myths of it is the homeowner doesn't own the house. That's a total myth. It's just like any other mortgage. You have a lien against the house. If you want to sell the house, you have to pay the lien off. If it's upside down because it went from 500 to 300 value, then it's FHA insured in that regard. Another myth is a homeowner can get forced out of the house somehow or another. When they're being forced to sell the house, it's because they are out of the house. It's not they were forced out of the house. The heirs won't inherit the home is a big one, like we discussed. Kids think, oh my goodness, so that interest is going to pile up, and so I won't have anything to inherit. And I wish I had a way here to find all the people that have the HECM product that need to sell, because a lot of them actually do just let the bank have it because the kids think there's no market value left that they can get anything out of. And most of the time they have all kinds of appreciation there. Another myth is somebody can outlive a HECM loan. Nope. You know, Donald knows I'm dealing with my dad. He's 98 years old. He has a house. The problem is he didn't do any kind of HECM or reverse mortgage. And so now to get the money out of the house with the look back on Medicaid, he can't do it at this point. So now we're going to have to sell the house at some point to get the money out to keep him in the nursing home financially. When you're 98 years old, he's outlived his money. And that's pretty easy to understand if you're 98. Social Security and Medicare will be affected. Nothing changes on Social Security, Medicare, nothing changes on your IRS taxes. It's the same thing as you have on any other loan out there. And a lot of people think there's large upfront out-of-pocket expenses. There are some fees. Those fees can vary depending on which way you go with what product of the HECM that you go. Some of them are adjustable loans, some of them are fixed, some of them have ways to what I'll call build the equity back in it. So you just have to figure out which one works best for your buyer, and that's what the HECM specialist is for. Oops. Okay, fingers. So our job is just to get them to the point where they understand they really want a $500,000 house. They have $300,000. They don't like a $300,000 because right now that's buying them 1,160 square feet house in the Villages. They don't see any way in the world they can live with less than 1,200 square feet. So our job is to help them understand, okay, you can take your 300,000, pay about 250, get that 500,000 that you really want, and still have 50K to put back into investments. And you still won't have any payments during your time that you're living there unless you want to. And then you let the HECM loan specialist present all the details and get them to understand all the nitty-gritty details that go along with it. Just like any other loan program, they have to understand it. So this is, and I'll put these links in the chat, but this is a link for HECM information. And the next one is where to find FHA approved lenders. So that's the official list. They have a totally different specialty when they're a HECM loan person versus, like I said, the regular. They typically don't cross and do both. So how do you pick a HECM loan specialist to work with? Well, first you go that list if you don't have a clue of who's in your area, and then have them explain, how does the HECM loan work? If you're not 62, pretend you are 62. Have them explain how the loan works. Have them explain how the numbers work. What would you have to do? You know, how's that all work? That way you get a better understanding. One of the big things that I like to know is, where are they doing underwriting? If they're doing underwriting in California and I'm in Florida, that doesn't work real well because they're 3 hours behind me and they're 3 hours behind me. They want to service the loan after hours and I want to be enjoying my time down. And then when the loan is closing, they're not open if we close before noon. So I'd like to know where that underwriting's happening. Do they service the HECM loans? Some of them do. A lot of them do what I'll call the packaging and sell them off type loans. Don't know if that's changed. Bob's on the call. He can explain if it has or hasn't. Another thing I'd like to know is how long they've been doing a HECM loan. You know, because I don't want the newest kid on the block, because they're not going to have the confidence to convince my buyers that it's a great thing. And then how long they've been at their current company, because a lot of folks will tend to move around. If they're not getting enough production at one, they move to another, because some of the biggest HECM loan places advertise on TV. Tom Selleck, if anybody's seen one of those. But they don't really sell the HECM on the TV, but they're talking about reverse mortgages, but they do have visibility. So there's three types of people: smart people that pay reasonable interest, dumb people that pay too much interest, and the smartest people that pay interest so they earn more interest via their investments. And that's Life's Co-Pilot Group. They are in our work. I don't know if they're in our workplace. Yeah, I think they're in our workplace group on EXP and probably the Seniors Network. But it's true. You may think, well, that's kind of stupid to let the interest accumulate. But once you sit down with the HECM specialist, you may find that where your investments are at now, or where your money is making more money, makes more sense to have the money over there than to take it out and pay cash for that $500,000. So what questions can I answer? Did we get anything resolved in your mind, Amy?
You did, and more questions just keep popping up. You did a really good job. Right now, I am looking at trying to get the aging in place thing going. And I was talking to somebody else that works with seniors, and they were saying you need to contact a reverse mortgage type person, because when a senior comes in and they get the equity out of their home, they don't necessarily spend it correctly, and then they end up losing a lot of money. And they could really use somebody like a CAPS or something that helps them with the modification so they could live longer in their home. And so now I'm just looking into that, and then how the HECM matches up. And it's still a little muddy, but you made it a lot more clear. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, to me, it needs to be a conversation with the financial planner, whoever is managing their money, their investments, and talking to the HECM specialist to find out what is the best way to go. Because when I started using this product back in 2010, I had a buyer come from Boston, and I said, are you going to pay cash or a mortgage? And she said, a mortgage. And she said, I'm doing, and at that point it wasn't called a HECM loan, but she called it a reverse mortgage. And I'm like, how in the heck are you using a reverse mortgage to purchase a house? Well, I got hold of her mortgage person, and the lady was very good about explaining because it was relatively new back in 2010. And once I got the concept, I love it because you run into the situation that people will not be able to afford what they want based on the fact that they don't want any mortgage payments. Exactly what was in the chat. We don't want any mortgage payments. So if they don't want a mortgage payment, this is a good option to get the house they desire. So it is a combination of working with your financial person, working with the HECM person as a buyer, and seeing if this is a good fit for you. What else can I answer?
So Amy, going back to maybe something you're thinking about. So let's look at that couple that's 62 years old. More than likely, one spouse made much more money than the other. They pass. Now the spouse, who's the surviving spouse, can continue to stay in the home with no monthly payments. However, they still lost their income, right? The spouse that passed, they lost that income, that Social Security check, perhaps the pension, as Debbie mentioned earlier. Still no mortgage payment is required. So just because one spouse, the surviving spouse, continues, they can still live in the home with no monthly payments.
Okay, that's really good.
So the other thing is so you take the couple and the person who did make more money, the beauty about it has peace of mind for their surviving spouse. They can't get booted out of the house and so on and so forth. So you're going to continue to live in the surviving spouse is going to continue to live in the home. Yes, they still lost that income, but they still have whatever money's left over in their retirement and their pension perhaps, and any of their 401k or whatever kind of retirement program they have. They still have that in their pocket, but they can never get booted out of the house unless, of course, as Debbie mentioned earlier, you don't pay your taxes, you don't keep the property up, things like that. And I know
So
Bob's doing. Go ahead.
Oh, no, well, I was just thinking, so what if they need long-term care type things? If they need an in-house person that comes in and such, then they don't have any equity that they can borrow from that, right? To help pay for that? Like you would in a reverse mortgage, right?
Well, you've already taken, quote, the equity out. So I really tell people that 50,000 that you're not putting down is not to take the trip around the world. That's to put in an investment and have to build on down the road when you do need home care or something like that.
Okay.
So you're, but in today's world, there are a whole lot of options to build some equity back based on you can pay interest only, you can pay payments. There's all kinds of options, which is well beyond what you need to know from a realtor side. All you need to know is how to say, hey, you want that 500, you don't want a mortgage payment, here's an option for you. So one other way that I'm seeing it used here quite a bit is a couple that bought a house together. One of them passes, they lost that income, they lost that pension, they lost the Social Security. Now they can't afford the high taxes that they had with the $1 million house. And now they may want a $400,000 or a $300,000 house. And they think that they can't afford it because they don't want mortgage payments because they lost an income. Now you show them, okay, you're now 75 years old. You come to the table with about 130,000. And then you don't have those payments. So instead of having to move out of the villages, which a lot of the folks here tend to think when they lose a spouse, lose the income, they may be able to stay here by selling what they have turn around and purchasing a smaller home for less amount and still coming out ahead. Hey, Bob, what would you add to the conversation?
Well, I love what you said. I agree with everything. I mean, there's a lot more detail, but as you said, you know, we're trying to keep a overall view of this whole thing. The one thing that I would just, which might answer some people's question, I think Amy is one of them, is that there is an interest on the money. The bank is not giving it for free. You say, what's the catch? Well, there is no catch, but like any mortgage, there is an interest rate, which is similar to what current conventional and FHA rates are, but it accrues onto the loan so that the bank is being paid. They're not giving something for free, but you have multiple choices. You get a notice every month, not a bill, so you don't have to make any payments unless you choose. But you could choose, let's say the kids say, well, I want to inherit this house. If, you know, time goes on and you accrue this interest for 30 more years, depending on the value of the house at that time, you're invading the equity, which is true. But I tell the kids, if you really would like the house and are concerned about maintaining the equity level in the house, either your parents or the kids for their parents could make payments on a periodic basis to pay part or all the interest it's accruing. And therefore, whatever you originally borrowed, you'd pay back when you sell the house, but you wouldn't have to worry about the additional interest. Or if cash flow is very important and you want to maximize the cash to live, then you could just let that ride. And what I tell people is, and you guys as realtors know better than I as a lender, but what's been the appreciation the last number of years, in the last year or so, on properties? I live in the villages. I work and I play in the villages, and my house is ridiculously gone up in value, more than an average mortgage, which again is right now still under 4%. Even with, I mean, I did one recently in the low threes, about 3.25, but even with rates having going up, we're still under 4. Well, even if you don't pay the interest and a 4% accrues on half of the value, which is a 2% of the value of the house would be the interest on the full value of the house. How many houses haven't gone up more than 2%? Don't have a crystal ball, but I'm seeing significant increases, which means even if you don't pay the interest and it accrues, the increase in value of the house is significantly greater, which means you're gaining equity, not losing equity, and the kids have to understand that. But again, when I talk to someone, I like to bring in the kids, their financial advisor, a tax person, because one of the things we talked about is they may have that $300,000, but is it in cash that's in a regular account, or is it in their IRA or 401k or some retirement account? A lot of times it is. I had someone I met with yesterday, and their concern is if I took all the cash out, he could buy for cash, but he's going to pay taxes on all this money he withdrew from his retirement account. So if he only has to take about half of it, you have reduced in half that tax bite. And that's one of the multiple strategies. But as someone who has worked in taxes, worked in financial investments over the years, worked for a major bank as a trust officer, what I tell people is you need to bring all your professional folks in, and as a team, come up with the best strategy for the individual. And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll stop talking, is the key to all this is, can the borrower, after being explained and educated about the programs and their various options, pay cash, have a house, downsize to less of a house so the mortgage so the taxes and homeowners insurance and HOA, et cetera, are less. Lots of different options, but they need to sleep at night and wake up in the morning and be happy with their decision, whatever decision they make. So I tell people the whole objective of education before they go into any transaction is learn about it, have your advisors, but just because one advisor might say, oh, you should do this or that, you need to understand it yourself as a buyer, because you're the one signing the documents, buying the house or committing your money. You want to make sure that you understand to the level that you can sleep comfortably nights and be happy with what you've decided as whatever route you're going to take. But this route is, I've been doing this since Johnson era. It's been a long time they've had reverse mortgages. Are they the same as they were? No, they're not. There's been major changes on a continuous basis. That's one thing. It's like taxes. There's always something new coming up. For the benefit of the seniors, this program has continuously improved. Look for where there may have been issues years ago. So part of the major problem is that some people remember when they had reverse mortgage. Before the FHA even started it, there was a reverse mortgage program. It's not like it is today. And people need to understand how many programs, other than maybe a first-time homebuyer program, require you to have a counseling session before you can even do an application. HECM requires it. Cannot take an application without counseling and obtain a counseling certificate. It's not a complicated process, and in most states, including Florida, you can do it over the phone, or it takes about a half hour to an hour, depending, and they ask the nonprofits who are trained to work with them. So it's not just going to be the HECM specialist, quote unquote, a salesperson. It's not going to be others. There's an independent counselors who are trained by the FHA and they have a major checklist to go through. So you got to go through that process. They're like a gatekeeper that keeps the person who may not really be able to understand what's going on. It kind of says, they're like a gatekeeper that say the first step is the person competent enough and understanding enough to proceed with this transaction? I love that, because so many people you'll find are going to go and buy a house, and then they'll say afterwards, well, I didn't know this, or I didn't know that, or someone told me something, be it with a mortgage or without a mortgage. There's a lot of factors, and the fact that this program requires a counseling, it just tells me that, they have the senior best interest at heart in the whole process. I'd encourage everyone to learn about it, get some information. HUD has information. There's a number of sources. I provide a free book to people that contact me, which I'll provide to anyone that wants it, realtors or potential prospects. And I tell people there's no cost or obligation to get the information. It's out there, and it's a great program. That's all I can say. And I applaud every realtor that tries to give a basic education without getting too complicated to their potential prospects. Great way to increase your revenue as a commissioned salesperson when you're selling a $600,000 house rather than a $300,000 house. It just makes all kind of sense from your perspective as a business person, as well as for the consumer. And Debbie did a great job.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, it really is. It's been kind of hard over the last year because our market's been pretty much 90% cash, because multiple offers, cash is king, queen. So we've been having problems even getting a regular loan through. But in our market, I'm seeing some softening happening, that the houses aren't flying off the market right away. So there's going to be some options for doing some loans. And I think this is one that you can do. Bob, they're asking if you could put your contact number or email into the chat. So, yeah, Bob's right here in our area. I did put the link over there. The first one is for the lenders, and I put it in there twice by accident. So just take that link and look in your own area to see who's doing HECM loans. And then the second one is kind of the overview from HUD of, you know, how to understand it, but it's a whole lot more than you need to understand. So, and I'll give Donald the presentation if you want to look at it again. He'll put it up with the recording tomorrow morning. So, what other questions can we answer? Donald, do we want to give a plug for what we're doing next week?
Sure, go right ahead.
So we here in the villages, and I'm sure everybody else, we get phone calls that says, I need an HVAC person. I need a handyman. When they're buyers, they want inspectors. They want, you know, if they're sellers, they need the handyman to fix stuff. They need a, you know, a sprinkler guy to fix stuff. So we put together a website, and we're not saying that everybody needs to do a website like we have, but we're going to talk about how to work with your vendors and get a great service provider vendor list put together. So you stand out a little bit more from the other realtors that don't have that to provide. We created ours not that long ago, and we've had a lot of people find it by accident, I think, and some I've told about, but it's the thing that we're going to show you how to do that next week. So Bob just put another link in. It's available as a ebook, he says. Oh no, Vince asked if it's available via ebook. Do you have yours ebook? Great. So anybody else have anything? Otherwise, we can get off early.
I can just tell you that a book that I have, which I will provide if you go to my website, put in your contact information. I'm providing that to realtors, borrowers, etc., free. It's a paperback book, about 140 pages. You can go on Amazon and buy the same book. And there is a inexpensive ebook version that's on Amazon. You can go to my site and see what the name of the book is. And it is written by an expert HECM person who at this point, basically, that's all he does is research. And every year he updates his book. Well as does a number of seminars and just national speaker. But for that information, just go to my site, which I put in the chat, and seniormortgages.now.site, and it'll click on it. And one of the other things I will mention is that if you do go to my site, it references a link to a site called askbobgersh.com. And on that, there is a button you can push to calculate. You don't have to put, you can do it 24/7. You don't have to put your name in, don't have to put a customer's name in, don't have to put an address. For purposes of good calculations, we do ask for a zip code so we know what area the property's in. You plug in the approximate value of the property, the ages of the spouse and their significant other, if there is a second person as borrowers, and it will automatically, within a couple seconds, tell you how much you have to bring to closing. It's very accurate. Rather than me going through and spending 20 minutes on my computer to run all kind of calculations, which I do when I'm doing a full proposal, I use it myself. And I can tell someone on the phone within seconds if a realtor says, well, how much approximately do people have to bring to closing, including closing costs? You just go there, click on it. It's a great tool to be able to, and you can throw in different numbers and it will tell you what people need to bring, and that way you can have a pretty good idea and make, if you have a certain property you're marketing and you want to tell someone how much they need to bring if they want to buy that particular property at a certain age, you just go right in there and you don't have to call me or anyone else. You can do it 24/7. So middle of the night, if you wake up and said, I want to see what the numbers would be, you can do it.
Isabel, you had your mic off. What's your question?
Yes, I had a question because I was just curious. If someone has a HECM loan and they outlive their money and they need long-term care, will they be able to qualify for long-term care through Medicaid if they have a HECM loan?
Well, Medicaid is really different for each state, so I can't talk about each state specifically, but I will use the example of my dad's. Years ago, they used to put a lien against the house for the nursing home, and then you either sold the house or they passed away or whatever came first. Well, now they say, well, you can't get down to the $2,000 spend limit or the 2,000 cap limit without selling that house. So in Indiana, we would still have to sell that house, but he would have been able to stay in the nursing home for a lot longer time period because technically he would have had more money that he had invested versus having it all stuck in the house where he would have had to sell quicker, if that makes sense. We're kind of in that boat right now. He's got lots of money in the house, but doesn't want to sell the house. 98 years old, he thinks he's still gonna live to 120 and be back in the house. Bless his soul, and we don't know what's gonna happen, but back to that, yes, she would, in Indiana, would have to sell. I don't know every state Medicaid laws, so that's a total back to find a tax advisor, find a Medicaid advisor on that. But I would say most of them's going to say you have to sell now.
Okay, thank you.
But you would have equity, like we said. That's why I like the program, because we've always had more appreciation here than the interest rate ever cost. So we're always staying ahead of what people thought they were in the hole. Well, it's the 8 o'clock hour. If we don't have any other questions, we'll call it a night. And thank you for everyone coming. Donald Maycott and I started the EXP Seniors Network and the Seniors Network on Facebook. Join those groups. We do this every Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Please come and join us again. Contact us with any questions.
This will be up and ready to go tomorrow morning. So you can all watch it again if you'd like. Have a good night. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Bob, for your input. And thank you, everyone, for coming. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.